If Carter was nearby, he didn't respond. Smart guy. Setna raised up his stump of a wrist. Wherever you are, Carter, I was impressed with the hand-cutting off spell. Your father would be proud. That's what matters to you, isn't it? Making your father proud? But think what would be possible if you joined me. I intend to change the rules of the game. We could bring back your father back to life. I mean, real life. Not that horrible half-life he's got in the underworld. Anything is possible once I'm a god. Around Setna's wrist, the mist curled, solidifying into a new hand. What do you say, Carter? Above the magician, the air shimmered. A giant blue fist, the size of a refrigerator, appeared over Setna's head and pounded him into the ground like a nail in soft wood. I say no. Carter appeared across the field, Anubis Yankee's cap in his hand. I stared at the crown of Ptolemy, the only part of Setna still visible above ground. You were supposed to wait, I told Carter. Set the trap. Let me deal with Setna. Carter shrugged. He shouldn't have brought up my father. Never mind that, Anubis said. Get the crown. I realized she was right. I would have sprung into action, except Neckbed and I had a moment of paralysis. The goddess wanted her hat back, but I took one look at the crown's eerie glow, remembered the way the Cobra goddess had been devoured, and I decided I was not touching that crown without latex gloves and maybe a hazmat suit. Before Neckbed and I could resolve our differences, the earth rumbled. Setna rose from the ground as if on an elevator platform and glared at Carter. I make you a perfectly fair offer, and you hit me with a giant fist? Perhaps your father wouldn't be proud after all. Carter's face contorted. His whole body glowed with blue light. He levitated off the ground as the avatar of Horus took shape around him. Setna didn't look worried. He curled his newly regrown fingers in a come here gesture, and Carter's avatar shattered. The blue light swirled towards Setna. Carter collapsed motionless on the wet ground. Setna! Sadie shouted, raising her staff. Over here, you little weasel! She blasted the magician with a jet of white fire. Setna caught it in his chest and absorbed the energy. Sadie, hon, he chided. Don't be mad. Carter has always been the boring one. I didn't really want to grant him eternal life, but you, why don't you work for me, eh? We can have tons of fun, tearing up the universe, destroying things as we see fit. That's not fair, Sadie said, her voice trembling. Tempting me with destruction. She tried for her usual sassy tone, but her eyes stayed fixed on Carter, who still wasn't moving. I knew I should do something. We had a plan, but I couldn't remember it. The vulture goddess in my mind was flying circles on autopilot. Even Annabeth looked like she was struggling to concentrate. Being so close to Setna was like standing next to a waterfall. His white nose drowned out everything. You know, Setna continued, as if we were planning a party together, I think this island will be perfect. My palace will go right here, in the new center of the universe. A muddy soccer field? Annabeth noted. Oh, come on now, child of Athena. You could see the possibilities. That old fool Serapis had the right idea. Gather all the wisdom of Greece and Egypt together in one place and use that power to rule the world. Except Serapis didn't have my vision. I'll consume all the pantheons, Zeus, Osiris, all those dusty deities. Who needs them? I'll just take the bits and pieces I can use for all of them. I'll become the head of a new race of gods. Humans will come here from all over the world to make offerings and buy souvenirs. Souvenirs? I said. You want immortality so you can sell t-shirts? And snow globes. Setna got a dreamy look in his eyes. I love snow globes. Anyway, there's room for more than one new god. Sadie Kane, You'd be perfect. I know you love breaking rules. Let's break all of them. Your friends can come along too. Behind the magician, Carter groaned and began to stir. Setna glanced back with distaste. Not dead yet? Tough kid. Well, I suppose we could include him in our plans. Although, if you'd prefer, Sadie, I can certainly finish him off. Sadie started to cry. She advanced, but Annabeth caught her arm. Fight smart, said Annabeth, not angry. Point taken, Sadie said, though her arm still trembled with rage. But I'll do both. She unfurled the Book of Thoth. Setna just laughed. Sadie, dear, I know how to defeat every spell in that book. You won't win, Sadie insisted. You won't take everything else from anyone. She began to chant. Annabeth raised her borrowed Khopesh, ready to defend her. Ah well, Setna sighed. I suppose you'll want this back then. Setna's body began to glow. Thanks to Neckbet, I realized what was going to happen a split second before it did, which saved our lives. Carter was struggling to his feet when I shouted, Get down! He dropped like a sack of rocks. A ring of fire exploded outward from Setna. I discharged my sword and lunged in front of the girls, spreading my arms goalie style. A shell of purple light surrounded me, and the flames rolled harmlessly over translucent wings that now extended from either side of me. With my new accessories, I was able to shield Sadie and Annabeth from the worst of the blast. I lowered my arms. The giant wings retracted. My feet, floating just off the ground, were now encased in large ghostly legs, with 3 long toes and the talons of a bird. When I realized I was hovering at the center of a giant glowing purple vulture, my first thought was, Carter will never stop teasing me about this. My second thought was, oh gods, Carter! Sadie must have seen him at the same time I did. She screamed. The fire had blackened the entire field, instantly turning wet mud into steaming cracked clay. The mist and magic lights had burned away. My new sword was a steaming line of bronze slag on the ground. Carter lay right where he dropped, wreathed in smoke, his hair charred, his face red with blisters. I feared the worst. Then his fingers twitched. He croaked a sound like "Gugh," and I could breathe again. Thank the gods, said Annabeth. Setna brushed some ash off his purple trench coat. Well, you can thank the gods if you want, but they won't be around much longer. Another few minutes, and the magic I've started will be irreversible. Now, Percy, please drop that silly avatar before I take it away from you. And Sadie, I suggest you give me that book before you hurt yourself. There's no spell you could read that will harm me. Sadie stepped forward. Her orange highlighted hair whipped around her face. Her eyes turned steely, making her look even more like a young Annabeth. No spell I could read, Sadie agreed, but I have friends. She handed the Book of Thoth to Annabeth, who blinked in surprise. Sadie? Setna chuckled. What's she gonna do? She may be smart, but she can't read Old Egyptian. Sadie gripped Annabeth's forearm. Miss Chase, she said formally, I have one word for you. She leaned in and whispered something in Annabeth's ear. Annabeth's face transformed. Only once before I had seen her with such an expression of pure wonder, when she beheld the gods' palaces on Mount Olympus. Sadie turned to me. Percy, Annabeth has work to do. I need to tend to my brother. Why don't you keep our friend Setna entertained? Annabeth opened the scroll. She began to read aloud in ancient Egyptian. Glowing hieroglyphs floated off the papyrus. They swirled into the air around her, mixing with Greek words, as if Annabeth was adding her own commentary to the spell. Setna looked even more surprised than I was. He made a strangling noise in the back of his throat. That's not... Hold on. No. No. He raised his arms to cast one counterspell. His crown began to glow. I needed to move, but Neckbet wasn't helping. She was a little too focused on Carter, who smelled like car-boiled and yummy. That one is weak, she muttered in my mind. Dead soon. The weak must die. Anger gave me the upper hand. Carter Kane was my friend. I would not sit around while my friend died. Move, I told Neckbet, and I took control of the vulture avatar. Before Setna could finish casting his spell, I grabbed him in my spectral claws and carried him into the sky. Now I live and breathe weirdness. It goes with the territory when you're a demigod. But there are still moments when I do a mental double take. Like when I'm flying upward inside a giant glowing vulture, flapping my arms to control make-believe wings, holding on an almost immortal magician in my talons all so I can steal his hat. That hat was not coming off either. I spiraled into the storm, shaking Setna, trying to knock the crown off his head. But the dude must have fastened it to his pompadour with superglue. He blasted me with fire and flashes of light. My bird exoskeleton deflected the attacks, but each time, the purple avatar dimmed, and my wings felt heavier. Percy Jackson! Setna writhed in my claws. This is a waste of time! I didn't bother responding. The strain of combat was quickly taking its toll. During our first encounter, Carter had warned me that magic could literally burn up a magician if he used too much at once. I guess that applies to demigods too. Every time Setna blasted me or tried to wriggle out of my grip with his nearly godly strength, my head throbbed, my eyesight dimmed. Soon I was drenched in sweat. I hoped Sadie was helping Carter. I hoped Annabeth was finishing whatever weird spell she had been chanting so we could trap Setna, because I couldn't stay airborne much longer. We broke through the top of the cloud layer. Setna stopped fighting, which surprised me so much. I almost dropped him. Then coldness began to seep through my vulture avatar, chilling my wet clothes, soaking into my bones. It was a kind of attack probing of weakness, and I knew I couldn't allow it. I curled my vulture feet tighter around Setna's chest, hoping to crush him. Percy! Percy! His tone made it sound like we were a couple of bros on a night out. Don't you see what an incredible opportunity this is? A perfect do-over! You of all people should appreciate that. The Olympians once offered you their most valuable gift. They offered to make you a god, didn't they? And you lovable idiot, you turned them down. This is your chance to correct that mistake. My avatar flickered and blinked like a bad fluorescent tube. Neckbet, my brain buddy, turned her attention inward. You turned down immortality?